a proud member of the Earglue Media family of podcasts.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Film Appraisers. This is that podcast that evaluates your favorite films, and when we say evaluate, that we actually do mean that. You know, each episode we're going to discuss a film brought to us by a loyal listener or a guest, and then we're going to appraise it. Exactly what we said we're going to do. We're going to find out how much it's worth in each of the following categories: narrative, music, technique, uniqueness, and longevity. Each category can receive a maximum of $20,000 for a possible $100,000 for the perfect film. And then we see where it stands next to the classics, other films that are brought to us by guests or listeners. My name is Josh, and I am thrilled to bring you today this discussion about a very special topic. It spares no man or woman, and we do so with a very special guest. Our film today is the 2003 romantic comedy written and directed by Richard Curtis, Love Actually. And this thing is starring, oh boy, all right, get ready, Hugh Grant, Bill Nighy, Colin Firth, Emma Thompson, Keira Knightley, Andrew Lincoln, Martine McCutcheon, Alan Rickman, Martin Freeman, Laura Linney, Chiwetel Ejiofor, I'm proud of myself for that one, and Lucia Moniz, and a ton of cameos from other well-known faces. This is episode 24, Loveless, Lovesick, and Lovestruck. And with us today to talk about Love Actually, he's 1/3 of your appraisal team. A lot of folks already know him, and to them, he's a film buff, he's a whiskey connoisseur, he's a gaming legend, but to me, he's perfect. It's Joe Kane.
Hey, quick tease on today's episode. I would much rather have watched 2.5 hours about the triumphant return of Billy Mack.
Yeah, Billy Mack, I will have to agree with you.
Best thing in this movie.
He pops up in my notes a lot.
Yeah, he's great.
I really, really enjoyed him.
Super great.
Well, Joe, our other co-host, Todd, he was spending time in Boston with his family, which is actually not that far from you. He didn't come by and see you, did he?
He's been trying to write a message out to our special guest here on cue cards all day, but he can't find the right words or avoid spelling errors.
Well, so he's not joining us, right? He's hanging out down in Houston. Yeah.
He's still playing with large sheets of white paper and markers.
Okay. Well, his loss, and trust me, it's everyone else's gain, and I'm happy instead with the guest that we have on this episode. He's really way better than Todd could ever bring. He's a really good friend of the show, and Joe, he's a great friend for both you and I. In addition to co-hosting over at the Cantina Cast, he's got various projects going on all across the network, as well as being our operations manager here at Earglue Media. This guy does it all because he can do it all, and it's long overdue. So welcome to the show, Jonesy.
Hey, I appreciate it. We've been working on this for, since day one.
A while.
I think, trying to come on.
Yeah.
Yep. I think you were slated for episode 2.
Yeah, I think so. Just life has gotten in the way of joining you guys. So I really appreciate you sticking with it and having me back, or having me on the show in the first place.
No, we're happy to. And like most of our guests, we're kind of relying on you to class this joint up. So thanks for joining us.
Why is that always my role on this network?
What's that?
Seems like it's always my role on this network to bring the class. I don't know what you guys think I actually bring, but
maybe our bar here at this network's pretty low.
Yeah, the bar is low. Yeah.
All right, so the reason you are here is really interesting, and I'm not sure many people would have predicted this one as one of your favorite films.
I didn't.
But tell us why. Yeah, why is this one special?
Right, yeah. So most people know me from the Cantina Cast and doing Star Wars discussion and really all around geek and nerddom, I guess, if you will. But back in 2003, 2004, I was going through a really rough patch, like emotionally, got out of a long relationship and was actually kind of depressed. And so I found myself watching like 2 or 3 movies over and over and over. Like, one was The Wedding Singer, obviously, which would have been great as well. But Love Actually had come out recently. And of course, this thing had so much buzz because of the all-star cast that, and actually there's members of the cast that are in this movie that are now stars that weren't really stars back then, right? With like Andrew Lincoln.
Yeah.
And which was, when I went back and watched it, I don't know, a year or two ago, I was like, wait a minute, who is that guy? But no, I was going through a really hard time, and it was just one of these movies that's become a bit of a classic, especially around the holidays. And it's always just struck a chord with me. And there's so many different stories and there's so many angles about relationships and whatnot that I just always found it really just interesting and cool and something to really kind of think about and go through it. And it kind of fits whatever mood you're in. If something happens, it's something we can all relate to in some way or another. And we could talk about how convenient some of these things are, but I mean, I had to suspend more belief for Rise of Skywalker than I did for this. So, I when I got done with it, I was like, yeah, I didn't have to work as hard at this one as I did a Star Wars movie. So, yeah, I'll take it. So it's actually held up pretty well. So I'm interested to see what you guys think.
Well, Joe, I know it's probably not as special to you, but why don't you kick us off? Maybe give us some overall thoughts about the film.
I'd never seen it before. This is my first experience.
Do you want to start off by just saying, Jonesy, first of all, we love you.
Jonesy, we love you.
Is that what you're trying to say?
And I think it's appropriate that you set the bar at Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, God.
Oh, gosh. If you call me pretty, then I know I'm in trouble.
You are a very pretty man.
Good thing you're pretty.
I'll give some like relatively generic thoughts here because we're going to get into detail on a lot of this stuff. I thought it was fine. I didn't dislike it. It really is in a lot of ways very standard rom-com. I mean, it gets the Christmas hook, which helps it a lot. It's got the big cast, which feels kind of like a oh man, I'm sorry, Jonesy. It feels kind of like a really good Hallmark Channel movie with a really good cast.
Fair enough.
It's not my style, but I definitely think it's got redeeming qualities. There is some pretty solid performances out of a couple of people. The problem with this cast, here's my problem with this cast, and we're going to get into this in more detail. I'm sure this will come up because I feel like the cast is the big thing for this movie. I think when dealing with a cast this large, it is way too easy to fall into all the pitfalls of large ensemble casting. And this is a big cast. I mean, when you see movies like, obviously a different kind of movie, but Endgame, another really big ensemble cast, a lot of those characters spent a large portion of the film on screen together in big groups. This is like one or two people of the cast at a time for most of this film, so nobody gets a lot of screen time. So no one really has a lot of chance to throw on those acting chops, and I just didn't really feel connected much.
Yeah, there are 9 story arcs going on in this movie.
Yeah,
which when I actually counted them out, I was like, there has to be just 5 or 6. There's 9.
Yeah.
And they feel like they are splitting. They all feel as developed as 1/9 of a movie.
A bit, yeah. Some a little bit more than others, but yeah.
Yes, there definitely some get more attention than others, but they. I think half the size cast would have made this movie better. That's where my overall thoughts on the film start.
Yeah, I totally get that. I felt when this movie was over, I started thinking, what would I do? Like, who would I pull out of this? And the first one for me was Laura Linney and her relationship with the guy at work and with her brother.
Yeah,
you'll probably pull that one out and save a little bit on. Well, maybe you keep the same run, or the runtime's pretty long, but you could keep the same runtime and maybe beef up the other characters. But I agree with you. I think if you could get this down to like 4 or 5 couples,
I think 5 would be
it'd be
top.
strong.
Yeah.
It'd be strong. Yeah, I came into this film honestly with like a preconception of what I was going to get into, and I wasn't like super excited about it because of that preconception. But I'll be honest with you, that very first scene, I thought it got the film off to a right start. The scene where the Hugh Grant voiceover and the actual footage of people greeting their loved ones.
Yep.
I loved that. I loved that opening. And then they hit you again with the ridiculous opening with Billy Mack. That was a great start. And I thought it like continued to be strong. And I thought this is completely different than what I expected. But then it started settling in and it getting into that groove of where I thought it was going to go. And I think that's where I lost some attention, which means I probably missed a few things that they had to put in really quick. And I probably missed it because there were some stories at the end I was a little confused. Like there was probably 2 stories I remember thinking, wait, why is he here? Or what happened to there? And how does he know him?
Yeah.
So I think maybe that part of it, when I lost my attention, and then it ended strong. But at that point I was kind of down. So it was hard to pull myself back up, which left me like overall saying, it's all right. Yeah, it was fine. Like you said. Does that kind of make sense?
I think, like you said, the way it started out, especially with the Billy Mack stuff, I actually think Billy Mack did this movie a disservice because by the time we were kind of through the setup of his arc, I wanted to see more of him. And when he wasn't the focus, I was less impressed. Like to me, his character was much better than the rest. And by comparison made them feel less fun. Like that opening with Billy Mack was fantastic. I liked that a lot. And then you fall into Alan Rickman was great, but he did not have much. I mean, he never gives a bad performance, but he did not have much. Martin Freeman was fantastic. All that really awkward discussion was fantastic. Yes. I liked that a lot.
Yes, very much so.
But I really did feel like, like you said, there's a couple of really great couples or, and the rest of them feel unnecessary. And then maybe they take too much they spread the film too thin.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And I like there's definitely a couple of these arcs that you probably don't need. Like I didn't really need the Jamie and Aurelia arc, basically falling in love when you can't even speak the same language, trope, which again, like you said, by the end of they were getting married at the end of the movie. And that was the thing with John and Judy. Like all of a sudden they're engaged. And I mean, that was only I think the epilogue was like roughly a month after the movie or after Christmas or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like all these things seem to move really, really, really fast. It's a very quickly, relationship. Yeah. And even the Colin and Tony thing, which was funny, with all the, then you get all the hot girls and all the ones that come up. It's like, okay, come on. Like that was a little much. Like for everything else you did in this movie, this is what you're going to present of course I'm looking at it through a 2020 lens too, right? Where this type of sequence and these types of scenes are becoming a little less common in romantic comedies. But it was even then it was like, oh, come on. This is just a bit over the top.
Was Colin the one? Colin was the one that went to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Was it that?
Yeah.
Yes.
And Tony was the director. So all these stories intertwine.
That's right. Yeah.
They all intertwine a bit. The only one that doesn't touch anyone directly is Billy Mack and Joe. But they are always, you can see them in so many of the scenes with the other characters. So it's like Billy Mack and them are just weaving their way through the entire story. They're always on the TVs in the background. Of course.
Exactly. On the radio and stuff like it's the glue.
The girls on the
time
video.
binds these.
God.
Yeah. And I thought I thought like the Keira Knightley, Andrew Lincoln arc was also kind of rough. Like they set that up. They started setting that up. And then you have like the reveal with the seeing the wedding footage, and then he does like the cue card thing, and it's like all this kind of like some of the bigger emotional gesture kind of stuff in the film. And then like he gets a kiss and just walks away and goes, well, that's enough. And like, that's,
congratulations.
And then he shows up at the end again
awkward.
as the third wheel still. It's like, that arc felt incomplete. I don't know.
I like the cue card idea.
Oh, I like the cue card. I don't like that. I don't. I like the arc up until the point where he just like, well, that's enough, and like walks away, and then is still just the third wheel awkwardly with the same couple. Like, I don't like the end of his arc.
Well, same with Harry and Karen. Like, we don't really know what's going on with them at the end.
Yeah,
they look like they're still together, but of course, it's exceptionally awkward, which makes a lot of sense. And conveniently, everyone's at the airport again, so that's great.
Right. Yeah, at the airport and at the recital.
Oh, well, right, yeah.
Just conveniently all in the same places all the time. Yeah,
right.
But that's the ensemble cast trope. I mean, even films that are not rom-coms that have ensemble casts, like you see in miniseries, they all end up intertwined at the end to where they're together. It's the trope that's hard to break out of when you're an ensemble cast.
But I was still satisfied that even with 9 stories, and you didn't get enough of them, but you really did get a good idea on most of it, where everyone was kind of coming from, what they were dealing with a little bit. So it was pretty impressive that within 2 hour and 15, 2 hour and 20 minute movie, with all of that, they were still able to get some sort of emotional connectivity with some of the characters. And at least you had an idea where most of them were kind of moving from and moving to and things like that. And maybe some of their, motivating reasons for some of it. Although some you had like Mia, like, oh, okay, she's just a receptionist who has I can't even say the words I want to say, a crush on her boss and is just throwing herself at it. I mean, some of that is a bit much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was surprised they got as much as they did, given how many stories that they were trying to throw out there. And actually, I think they cut one of the story arcs out. I think there was actually a 10th at one time.
Well,
oh gosh. Wow.
That was probably mandatory at this point. Like,
yeah. And then Rowan Atkinson's character, I think his name is Rufus, was actually supposed to be like a Christmas angel or something like that. So, and that got,
I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can definitely see with where he pops up. And they advertise him like he's a main character when you see like posters and read stuff. But yeah, he just shows up twice?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, he's great though.
He is.
The final
he's just really good. I had something in my notes and I just don't know where to put it. It doesn't fit in any kind of discussion. But the one thing that really stood out to me, I would say really stood out to me. A lot of things stood out to me. But the one thing that I remember writing down was, we're only 2 years after 9/11. It's 2003 when this film is supposed to be set. Definitely when it was released. But that little kid jumps TSA. He's getting a beat down. That ain't happening, right? That little kid's not going to be able to get through the airport like that.
Well, he's not going to outrun a bunch of adults either. So
no.
Yeah.
But again, I actually I had that.
Unless he's motivated by love.
That thought took me out of the movie when he decides to sprint through security and stuff. I was like out of it. Like the first thought I had was, this is directly after 9/11. There was no chance. Like I couldn't. Like that was a spot where I was unable to suspend disbelief. I was immediately out of immersion in my own thoughts on that.
What's unfortunate is that story arc between Daniel and Sam was actually one of the more you actually saw it change throughout the movie. Even just how he he calls him Daniel early on and then he calls him Dad at the end. I mean, so it was one of these arcs you actually got to see the development of it more robustly than you did the other ones. And it's unfortunate that it hit so many of the stereotypical romantic comedy running through an airport type of thing. Right. But it was still, it just kind of soured the entire arc a bit of what was otherwise a really good arc and especially Liam Neeson did a great job, I thought. And there's 2 quotes in this movie that are 2 of the best ever. And one of them is by the kid.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it was Billy Mack saying, "Don't do drugs."
Yeah, don't buy drugs, kids.
So don't buy drugs. Yeah,
that is the best one. Become a pop star and they'll give them to you for free. But no, Sam says, "Let's go get the bleep kicked out of us by love," which I just thought was great.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I agree. That relationship did have a lot of development. I just didn't like, which is hard to believe, I didn't like Liam Neeson's character. Maybe it's just because you don't adults. I know it's his stepson, but adults don't tend to talk like that to kids. Maybe that's fairly unique for this film, but it seemed like he just treated that kid like he was his buddy or his adult friend and not like his stepson who needs a role model. And that irked me a little bit about his character. But you're right. The arc of the development of those two were probably some of the best.
But again, you see the difficulty of a stepfather when and I don't know how long they were married for, but it sounds like he came into Sam's life a bit as he was a little bit more grown. But you see that the tension there between stepdads and stepkids, which I thought was at least they were able to show some of that, which is a pretty interesting way to see it. We usually see it more like teenage type of years and you get all the direct conflicts, but you don't get to see this other aspect of it.
Which it started to go that way. You thought there's something wrong with the kid and you think it's headed that direction, but what's wrong with him is he's lovesick. That's it. And you think, oh, that's it? Oh, okay, well, let's go take care of it.
Yeah.
Joe, what do you think about, let's jump into some ranking here. I think we can reveal, definitely going to reveal how you feel about this. But I want to get some ranking out there. I want to get some dollar values. Jonesy, feel free to jump in.
Sure.
We'll give you a chance at the end to
argue with us.
argue with us on it. But Joe, why don't you kick us off with narrative and what you thought about that?
All right, so I'll start out with some praise first. I do think that they did a pretty good job of getting us to identify, especially on the emotional front, with kind of a lot of characters that did not have a lot of screen time. If there had been 5 couples or maybe even 6, if you really stretched it, you probably would have had a much stronger bond. But they did a pretty good job getting you to bond in the time they had, and I appreciated that. There was some pretty decent acting, particularly out of Bill Nighy and Martin Freeman. Those characters were both fantastic.
Yeah.
And there was some acting. There were some characters that I think probably would have, I would think, more highly of their acting if they'd had a little more screen time. I think, like I said, I think some of this performances suffer from being on screen for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes total throughout the film.
Yeah.
So that's rough. And that's probably difficult to, it's definitely a difficult thing to manage with a cast this large and with this many big names. Even considering how many of them weren't really huge names at the time, there were still quite a few names that were popular. A personal gripe for me, there is no thing I've ever enjoyed Hugh Grant in. He annoys me more than any actor ever.
Oh man, this is like one of the few that actually don't mind him in.
I just don't like his face. I don't like his voice. I don't like the way he talks. I just don't like Hugh Grant.
But what about the scene with him and Billy Bob Thornton though? I thought that was a pretty good scene.
The scene at the podiums, I think, was probably the best thing he did in the film for sure. I tell you, Billy Bob Thornton, I would have liked to see more of him as the president. That would have been okay. He seemed just sleazy enough to be an actual president, and I liked that. But on the flip side of that coin, kind of the same bit, the rushed pace, there really isn't any sound story to this film. It's way more a series of character pieces, like small character pieces, than it is a story through line. It's just intersecting lives, kind of. The stories are light, and it's way more about stories are very light, and it's way more about seeing relationships just grow or try to grow. And that, like I said, I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot. I'm going to try not to harp on the same point. I really think this is another area where it suffered a little too much from having too many storylines. I really think this film would have been a lot better with like half. Because I think some of the storylines had potential to be really good with a little more chance to breathe. And they just didn't get it. So
if I can pose a question to you guys and maybe start with Josh here. So this movie made about $250 million, right? And it had a budget 40 to 45, presumably mostly cast. This movie did not really do well in the States, but it did quite well in the UK. Yeah. Do you think it's just a different type? It's kind of aimed or done in a style that's just maybe not as relatable for Americans compared with English folks who seem to have enjoyed it and helped it kind of become more of a holiday classic in some circles. Do you think there's anything to that?
I think being around the holidays probably helped it quite a bit. I don't know if I assume it was probably released at Christmas, which would have helped it quite a bit. And it does have what in my notes when I put about story and plot, I talk about this has some British humor to it that helps with the type of being a rom-com, having British humor in it, I think helped it. That's probably helps it more for American audiences. I think a lot of this has to do with Richard Curtis. He is a well-known stock in England, and I think that sold a lot of it. I mean, you're talking about the guy that did like 4 Weddings and a Funeral and
Bridget
I
Jones.
think maybe it was Bridget Jones and maybe Notting Hill, but he's got on his resume
TV shows too.
Yeah, he's successful and well known there. So I think that helped quite a bit. Being around Christmas time as well probably helped it quite a bit as also.
Yeah, and you also have some, like, not entirely, but you do have like a pretty good selection of really well known UK stars.
Yeah,
right.
Like Martine McCutcheon, she's unknown here, but she's known there. I mean, she's a pop singer and she's been on TV.
Well, and even if you look at the big global names that everybody knows, they're pretty much all British, right? Yeah. So I mean, you're looking at I feel like this is just a relatively UK centric film. I don't know that I would say I don't know, so I couldn't say either way. I would not be surprised if stylistically this just falls more in a UK sensibility kind of thing, but I couldn't say for sure. I don't really know intricately the UK sensibilities for film like that.
Yeah, it didn't feel like a typical American rom-com at the very least. Even if you can't put your finger on it, it just feels a little different, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. I agree. Well, Joe, what'd you end up with your appraisal?
So I feel like where it comes into a narrative, where the strengths of this movie fall, they're not necessarily in narrative. So for me, I fell in at 8K for narrative.
Okay, slightly higher. I would agree with you that I don't think the narrative is its strong suit. I will say some of the acting is strong. I thought Bill Nighy did a great job with Billy Mack. I love his character. Mm-hmm. Even though I didn't like Liam Neeson's character, he did a great job as always. To me, Emma Thompson, she's fantastic in everything she does. I mean, she's just like, Renaissance woman. She can do anything. Yes. And her performance is really great here. But you combine that with her getting to share scenes with Alan Rickman, to me, that's like the best part of this film. Seeing them together, especially in a very intense storyline. I wish it would have resolved itself a little bit not differently, but just have some resolve. I would have really enjoyed that.
Well, and that's the stuff that I mean when we were talking about where like some of those storylines I would have loved to have seen way more of and gotten rid of others. Like that stuff was fantastic. Those two, the relationship with Liam Neeson, like that stuff was really, really good. And it was so limited by nature of the film. I felt disappointed, I guess.
Yeah. Besides the story and the plot, the only thing else I have on narrative was I didn't intend on writing about it, but something caught my attention in regards to lighting when there's the scene in the car with the prime minister near the end with his who he wants to be his girlfriend. They're headed to the show or the recital. They soften the light on her, which you should. I mean, you think about those films from like the 40s when a detective goes into a room and there's the damsel in distress or there's somebody coming to talk to him that's a female, and they soften it. They soften it quite a bit so that the features are more pleasant, like you would do in like Photoshop or something. Mm-hmm. And it's intentional. You want to show the glowing features, and they did that on her, but they did it a lot, and they probably overdid it, why it caught my attention. You want to do it subtly enough to where you don't know why you really like her right now. So I backed up a little bit to look at a few other shots, and I noticed a lot of just really overexposed shot. Like when you're shooting and you've got hard light above you, like in a hallway, someone's standing off camera with something to dampen that light a little bit, but I didn't see that. It was a lot of hard shadows. And maybe that was intentional for certain scenes. I just saw it a lot where I didn't expect to pick it up. Not a big deal, but that stood out to me, so I thought it was worth mentioning. But when it comes to the story and the plot, you can really mess up a rom-com, and you can really mess up a film with an ensemble cast. And I don't think this one did that. Besides having probably too many storylines, but it could have been a lot worse. Rom-coms are those that they're very difficult and challenging. And I don't think they did that on this one. Now, I will say I thought the runtime was a bit long. I had anticipated this film to be 90 minutes, 100 minutes max, but 2 hours and 14 minutes is quite a bit. If you're going over 2 hours, as a famous director said, Sidney Lumet always said, if you're going to go over 2 hours, you better have something to say. And I just felt like it comes down to it. We got too many relationships in the film. Eight relationships or 9 couples or however many it was. It's just a lot to track. And because I had a hard time liking some of the characters, with the exception of like Billy Mack and the guy that goes to Wisconsin, Martin Freeman's character, they're cool. I liked that and liked those characters, but a lot of them I didn't. And I don't have to, but there needs to be some resolve, or there needs to be an arc to bring you back around in a rom-com. If you're talking about some drama where there's different kind of story, that's different. This is a rom-com. I need to feel good at the end. I think what I liked most about this film with the story and the plot was the comedic timing of a few jokes. It's British humor. That's right up my alley, and I really like that. So I'm slightly higher than you. I'm at 9,000. I don't want to split too many hairs about that. And if you're cool with going 8,500, I'm more than happy to do that.
We're so close. That's fine. That we're right in the same ballpark.
All right. For music, I will say there's a good use of popular music, Christmas music, without overdoing the Christmas music, and then some score. I say score because there's just traces of score, like blink and you'll miss it kind of score. But in the same way, not exactly, but in the same direction as something like Almost Famous, we got a lot of popular music, like Joni Mitchell and Dido and Norah Jones. And what I consider to be the best love song of all time, God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, they did a really good job with the use of the popular music, as well as taking a pop song from the 60s and taking it and making it a Christmas song, albeit a really awful Christmas song. But it also is like part of the film, that the Christmas is all around us. So I honestly think music is the strongest category for this film, believe it or not. I gave 12,000 for music.
What I really like about that, Josh, just to kind of tag on to it, is that they took Christmas All Around Us and they blended it throughout the entire movie. So it's like the theme song for the show, but like you said, it's always very, very subtle. You hear it, you see it on a picture or on a TV in the background, and you can barely hear it. And the characters looking at it and kind of awkwardly tilting their head like, what the hell is this thing? But I like that they kind of weaved it really throughout the movie so seamlessly, and you don't really even notice it half the time. And you've kind of learned all there is to know about the song. And you're right, the score aspect of it, I think there's a little in the airport. I think there were a couple little moments right after the concert, I believe. But I mean, and who would have expected the Trogs to be front and center on a movie soundtrack for one of their songs?
2003.
Yep.
I mean, I honestly, as bad as Christmas All Around Us was, I loved it in a probably the wrong kind of way, but I still loved it. I love how plain they were with how much of a naked cash grab it was through the whole movie. It was so fun. That was like Billy Mack, unsung hero. I mean, I made a joke about it at the beginning, but I would actually watch a Billy Mack movie. Like, that was really good.
Bill Nighy is so awesome too.
Oh, he's so good. I really love him. Like Josh says, their like licensed music is really good. It's very fitting, and what score there is fine. I do think there was, so they kind of played the same big crescendo for the resolution of just about every relationship. So you get to hear kind of the same big crescendo 9 times. It might not be for every one of them, but it's a lot. And I thought that was maybe a bit much, considering it was all kind of packed into like the last 20-ish minutes of the movie. But for the most part, I thought the music was fine. It didn't really, like, we could talk about a lot. It either adds to or subtracts, or you don't notice it. I would say most of the time I wasn't thinking about the music, and when I did notice it, it was good. So, I mean, except for, and I don't know if I'm going to catch crap for this, except for Smooth, I don't ever need to hear that song ever again. I've heard that song 10,000 times in my life. I lived through the early 2000s. I'm done with it. But outside of that, totally fine. I'm right with you. I got 11 for mine.
I tried hard. I was struggling just now to try to make a joke of, or else just forget about it. But I couldn't do it with the Smooth lyrics, and I couldn't make one happen. So, but it's too late. It's stuck in my head now. So thanks for bringing up Smooth.
You're welcome.
Really
now it can be stuck in your head for the next week, like it was for me,
for the last 20 years. what'd you come up with on music?
11.
11,000. I'm at 12. I'm going to go 11,500 for music. Still really strong. Even in the scheme of all the films we've got on the list, that's a pretty strong score for film or for music. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's above average, maybe not a ton above. It's really not common to break into that like 15 plus range for any category.
That's hard to do.
It's really hard.
It's really hard.
That's a whole different echelon, and I think,
especially for a licensed soundtrack, these are very kind of niche, right? With how they fit in, because you got to find the right song. It's got to fit the right mood, and sometimes it just doesn't work, and sometimes it's just way in your face. But this one did. There was only one I think that really bothered me, really any. But yeah, that seems fairish.
Just forget about it.
Forget about it.
Ugh.
All right, why don't you take us to the technique category?
So I honestly don't have a ton to say here. I know this is really your category anyway.
Hey, I got 3 bullet points, so if you steal my stuff, we're done.
The film, I found it to be, if I was to use a single descriptive word for technique, it would be competent. It wasn't ambitious at all. It was there was a lot of like center framed still camera shots. There was some pans and zooms. There was like a couple of shots where the camera would sweep around a character while they were writing on a table or something. The editing was fine. They did do some cool stuff with like Jonesy mentioned, with Christmas All Around Us kind of being tucked away here and there. But just kind of in general, I didn't really have anything super negative or super positive to say for technique. And so I came in right like dead center down the middle at 10 for technique. It's good.
Yeah. You said it best with competent. It doesn't get ambitious, like you said. It was a great way to phrase that. There's not a lot there that's going to influence the story or stir emotion with the lens. To just use the lens to bring those feelings, and the art of the camera is really not present at all. When we talked about Clerks, you remember they basically used just a very, very small number of shots for telling that story. This one's a little better, but it's still just a very limited number of shots. A lot of medium shots, a lot of close-up shots, handful of dolly shots, and really that's it. I mean, that's all they needed to make this happen, which is fine because that's what they needed to make the film. I thought the strong suit and technique, believe it or not, was the editing and the transition, the smooth transition between the scenes, like Jonesy was saying, the same song transitioning from one, not even just like the Christmas is All Around Us, but like the Bay City Rollers playing at the funeral, and then that merges into the wedding reception. They did a great job in weaving all of these stories together in an editing standpoint. Like they mention, somebody says something about a news headline, is the Prime Minister in trouble? And then they cut to the Prime Minister's next scene. Just little things like that. I thought they did a great job. So I hit 10,000 also. I'm right dead in the middle for it. I thought, had they taken a little bit, I would say risk, but had they taken more liberty with the camera, I would have gone more. But I think it's right down the middle. I think 10,000 is fair for it.
And I think you got to make sure you stay out of the way of some of it. For this type of movie, you don't need to get super fancy.
The actors and the actors do the story for you. Right. You have the actors there. You do close-ups and you let them do the work.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up the transitions. I think that's when you have a story, when you have so many stories going on, you can really feel like you're herky-jerky trying to get through all of them, and they just take you out of a moment and cram you into another one. And there's a couple of moments where you have that, but like you were saying, generally they have this way to where it doesn't feel like they just, grabbed you out of this scene and you just got thrown into this other one, except maybe I counted like once or twice. I think something like that may have happened, but I mean, in general, it's really well done that you didn't notice the transitions between all the stories as much as you probably should have or could have.
Yeah, if I remember, some of those that you jump right into the next scene were a little bit intentional because of the comedic element you're getting, specifically from Martin Freeman and and Joanna. I can't not remember. I think her name is actually like just Joanna in the credits. But
Right.
Yeah.
And it's intentional. You want that to just pop in all of a sudden because it's so over the top of what's going on. All right, we're now at longevity. Joe, I'll start us off with longevity. I thought it was really funny. I laughed a lot of times, which is good. The jokes are still effective. Almost 20 years later, 17 years later, and it doesn't feel dated. It doesn't feel unrelatable by any means. There's recognition of this film. If you take some shots from this film, it's definitely recognizable. You know, where the Prime Minister dances. I get gifs from time to time of that. The Christmas song, you know, the cue cards, things like that. I think in like the pantheon of films, it's probably a little bit forgettable if we don't have that Christmas element to it, which I think has made the film linger on a little bit past its life. But it doesn't matter because they use Christmas and it's still alive, right? That gave it to them. It's like you're going to dock them because they used Christmas. So yeah, is that as unique? No. But for longevity, that's helped it extend way past its life. And like Jonesy said, that this film does a ton of money in the UK for one reason. It's still lingering on in the United States. I'm at 8,000 when it comes to longevity. Just a shy below the halfway mark.
My gasp was not audible.
I think we kind of got to the same place for slightly different reasons. I'm with you. I think largely this film is in a pretty crowded space. Although it does stand out in ways, there's nothing super remarkable from a longevity standpoint about the film. I think it does. You get a couple of scenes, like you said, that show up in gifts and stuff. It lingers around. I think the Christmas thing helps it a lot. I do think, not that I would say that it is dated, but I do think some of like the licensed music and even like some of the tech and stuff that you see, like the environments, do stand out as a little bit of the early 2000s. I think the further we get away from that time, the more that's going to stand out. And from where that comes in for me is like, well, I don't think that necessarily hurts repeat viewings for people who love this movie, like Jonesy or whatever. I think some of that might affect bringing in new viewers, right? Where I don't see where you look at the number of rom-coms that take place around Christmas that come out every year. What's going to make people go back almost 20 years to watch this one for the first time? And I don't have a lot of answers for that. This may have been relatively unique in its approach to this genre when it happened, but there have definitely been large ensemble rom-coms since that I also didn't watch, but I also know I hear about every Christmas or once in a while throughout the year. Valentine's Day, I hear about the same couple. So I think this is kind of in a space where maybe it doesn't have anything super remarkable to make it transcend time like you would see in films that we've rated, 12, 14, 15 in longevity. Yeah. Okay. And so I came right at 8 also. It's the same spot, kind of slightly different rationale, but I think we're kind of in the same area. I think 8's probably a pretty fair number for it.
So I'm kind of surprised you guys didn't do more of if you have a Christmas time romantic comedy with bad language and sexually suggestive, well, not really suggestive, pretty overtly demonstrated acts, even though there's no nudity or there's no actual things happening. But I mean, those types of things, if you're talking about a holiday movie, quote unquote, I think those make it difficult to attract, I think, the new viewership that you were talking about, because it's not something you can put like on network TV. This has got to go on something either after hours or something like that. I don't know how you put this on TV in general, because I don't know that you would, because quite honestly, the places you would put it would likely be Hallmark Channel, like you were saying earlier, Joe, or things like that. It doesn't fit those because those are more family friendly from, language and visuals. So I think
and that was another thing that kind of hit me on longevity too. Was, we talked about it actually a little bit earlier. I missed it here, but some of the scenes felt a little bit out of today's cultural approved behaviors. Like some of the stuff where with Colin going to America, you don't see that in movies anymore. You don't really see scenes like that at all anymore, because that felt like
Coyote Ugly all of a sudden.
Yeah, it did. That felt almost 90s-esque in its delivery. That could have seen that in like a Seth Green comedy,
So what about the Robert Palmer? It was Robert Palmer, right? Who did Simply Irresistible.
For the video.
Yeah, the spoof on the video. Yeah. Do you think that has any kind of, some of that is lost on this generation, of course, and maybe even some of ours. But does something like that also, does it fit that, Joe? Or is it more, it's acceptable because this thing is so over the top already, and they just keep ballooning it on purpose?
I kind of felt like that was just come to be expected from the character itself.
Right.
Like I would be surprised if he didn't have like Spinal Tap and like their album covers.
Yeah.
Like I expect you to act like that, especially from what I've seen from you so far.
Yeah. And his whole, like a big part of his character was that he was out of his time, out of his element.
Yeah.
So that probably plays better because that's a commentary on him. And not just passed off as normal. Like even like the bit where Billy Mack does the nude song at the end, like that's something I could imagine a washed up rock star doing for attention.
Right. Yeah.
He's just making good on his promise.
He's an honest man. Some of those things you mentioned, Jonesy, I actually considered that for uniqueness. You don't get that kind of language typically in a rom-com. You definitely don't see some of the scenes that you see with Martin Freeman and his
I had more of that in uniqueness also.
Yeah. So I put that in uniqueness along with, we talk about screenplay being original or adapted, and I did give Richard Curtis a lot of credit. He wrote it himself. It's original. And I think you're right. I think the intention, somebody had mentioned it earlier, that it was probably meant for multiple films here, but the end product that we got, it still worked as a film. I would be interested in seeing, though, some of it a little bit pared down. As far as some of the tropes that just come with the rom-com or an ensemble film, it just suffers what most ensemble films suffer from. We've got a huge group of characters, they're separate stories, and they come together at the end, just like we had mentioned earlier. What does help this film, though, is we do get a little bit of tease throughout of it, how some of them are connected. We know one's brother is the prime minister, or somebody works for this other person. So I thought that did help a little bit with the ending's believability. But the rom-com with like an all-star cast, it's hard to give a whole lot of unique points for. But I did, because of some of the things I just mentioned, also with it being an English comedy, like I had mentioned, with the dry humor and some of the scenes that we saw, I think that helped it quite a bit transcend that normal genre. So, Joe, I actually came in right in the middle again, as I did for technique, and I'm at 10,000 for uniqueness.
So I'm pretty close. You kind of covered a fair amount of what I had. I did have notes for, you don't usually get a Christmassy rom-com that is quite as, not really, I don't know, raunchy is probably a strong word, but there, there's nudity, there's swears, it's very sexual. I feel like, so I think it handles the ensemble thing better than some, not as good as others. I feel like, and I should say better than most, not as well as others. I think a lot of movies with ensemble casts, big casts, or even if they're not big names, just big casts, really suffer where you just don't get connected to anybody in the film. And this does pretty well. Personally, I think when you get to ensemble films, I think big casts like this are a mistake unless you're going to have people in groups. I mentioned
lump them together.
Yeah,
almost.
Like I mentioned, I think that was the only reason why they managed to pull it off for Infinity War Endgame, whatever, is because you were frequently dealing with 5 or 6 of them at a time. so they were getting screen time. But with a film like this, where you're getting them kind of in couples or alone, they just breeze through. And the fact that they're able to do that and also get you to connect and also deliver a fair amount of laughs and get your dry humor in there and kind of push the lines a little bit on what you expect out of a rom-com, especially one that's set in Christmas time. I think that some of that stuff was really good. I took a little bit more away point-wise here, dollar value-wise here, for just, there are just so many rom-com tropes in this film. And I get, that is a function of being a rom-com. I guess that's a part of it. And I get that. But at a certain point, like, we talked about, like, every one of them had to show up. And maybe that's a function of there being 9 relationships, and maybe a little bit like, I think maybe they were trying to comment on that a little bit, especially with the relationship with Liam Neeson and the kid, where they kind of like watching the rom-coms and talking about them a little bit, or watching those movies and talking about them a little bit and then commenting on it. But I still really didn't need to see the running through the airport thing, or some of that stuff just fell flat for me. So I did not fall much further from you, but I was at 9K, and I think relatively same area.
Yeah, really, really close. I'm willing just to let's Jonesy take it.
Yeah, I think right, when you think about uniqueness, though, and I think you were bringing it up, you guys were talking about it earlier with the, we want resolution. I think it's good we didn't get resolution for 2 of the arcs. We're not totally completely right. So the Sarah, Carl, and her brother Michael thing, while that's something we probably could have removed from the movie, I liked that while it seemed like all the pieces were coming to place, she kept making this choice to be there for her brother, and at the expense of herself. And even the really uncomfortable moment when they're sitting across from each other and he attempts to hit her, but she still goes back, and they're still, their relationship is a little stronger because of it, and she sacrificed herself. I think that was something you don't normally see. And then again with the Harry and Karen thing, where this is Emma Thompson and Alan Rickman, where they didn't just figure everything out and they're all happy-go-lucky. There's obvious tension there. They appear to be sticking it out and maybe working on it, but it's not comfortable. It's actually quite uncomfortable in some ways. And so I think it was nice to still have a bit of dissonance, though, where not everything was happy-go-lucky and finished on a high note. And I agree, though, to some of the criticism, though. You're trying to put everything back together, or everything together, and it all just falls into place a little too quickly and a little too easily in a lot of ways. And especially when you start bringing them together, you kind of roll your eyes a bit. But I think it was nice to have these couple little storylines that still have a little bit of dissonance. And if they would have gone away with some of the over-the-top things, I think it would have given them a bit more body and a bit more impact to the story overall. Instead, you've got Colin bringing back, hot chicks for his brother Tony, and a little over the top of things. But anyway, I liked that we didn't get everybody had a happy ending of sorts. We did have some characters that things fell short just a little bit.
Well, it's a different kind of love, right? I mean, it's like in the movie Frozen. It's not the type of love that you're expecting towards the end. It's a different kind of love between a brother and a sister, a love between 2 old friends, Billy Mack and his chubby manager. Right. And then the love that still exists. Otherwise, Emma Thompson wouldn't be with Alan Rickman if it didn't actually exist. That's actually, those are the things I felt like if it didn't have those things, I would probably be down in the 5s or so. That's what brought me up to about 10. And Joe, if you're willing to come up a little bit to 9.5, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, and we've talked before, and I cannot for the life of me remember what film we were talking about this on. I don't need resolution. We talked about, I wish I could pull this off the top of my head, but I don't remember what it was. I don't need like the story to end up wrapped up nicely in a bow to like the story. I think the storylines that did not get resolved suffer the same as the ones that did, where it feels like we got to a point and then just ran out of time because of the pace of the film, the number of storylines, and that's where those storylines ended. And you get the big convenient, everybody's in the same place, everything wraps up, that you get with the ones that do resolve. It's kind of the same way the ones that don't resolve feel as far as their conclusion. They don't feel. I don't need everybody to find their perfect mate in this film to be, for it to get points or to get dollars. Yeah. I just felt like they didn't have enough in the story, in the conclusion of their stories for the resolutions. They didn't earn them. Which is like, again, I would have loved to have seen less arcs and had some more time for them. I think that's the thing that like this. I had genuine frustration with this film because there were things I would have loved to see more of than we got. Like even the Keira Knightley and what's his name?
We just call him Peter and Mark.
Peter arc there. When he does his little flashcard thing and it doesn't work out, like how awkward is hanging out with your best friend and his wife now that you like confessed your love to her and then kissed her in the street, and then like the next time we see him they're just hanging out together again.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to see more in between those two, but we didn't have time for it. Kind of the same thing with Alan Rickman and Emma Thompson. Just repeating myself a lot with the not having time for the storylines I liked. This would have been great as like two separate movies with half of these people split up or something. But this is what we got. And yeah, I'm totally fine coming up. 95 is fine. Like I just, like I said, this is not wholly ununique. This is definitely not like the stuff we talked about definitely brings it up from being a 1, 2, 5,000 mark kind of movie. Which honestly, I think if you look at a lot of rom-coms, if you put a lot of rom-coms in this and looked at them, a lot of them would come in the like 2 to 5 mark.
Right.
Yeah. I agree. Well, going 9.5 here puts the total at 47,500. I got a feeling, Jonesy, you want to maybe discuss a little bit of a boost, maybe in the appraisal for longevity. But if you want to try to negotiate for more, by all means, this is your shot.
Well, I don't beg for anything. Let's just be clear. But I think largely it's pretty fair. All right. I mean, romantic comedies are not going to be wholly unique and bring a lot of new things to the table and to an audience. And quite honestly, that's not what audiences are looking for. They're kind of looking for a feel-good movie for the most part, some laughs. And I think this one delivers on a lot of that. And I like the raunchier side of it. I think just because, like you guys were saying, it's a little different, a little unique in that regard. And the way that they used the music was pretty good, I thought. The narrative, I thought, was a bit harsh on it. I think while I agree it would have been nice to see a bit more, I also I started thinking about this more of like, okay, do today's audience, if an audience today, would they handle it better? Because their attention is just a little bit less, Yeah. And we've kind of seen this trend of things, and you have this movement between it. And again, a really seamless kind of movement to where you can handle all these stories and still deliver a very solid movie. And I'm not saying this is the greatest movie of all time or anything, but I like that it was just from that aspect of it, for what they did. I'm really impressed they pulled it off as well as they did, because we've seen this fall apart 100 times, right? Especially in romantic comedies where they just do way too much and they can't deliver on any of it. And this one delivers, 75, 80% of it pretty well. So anyway, I like those things about it. I mean, it's obviously there's an emotional attachment to it for me, but I think largely the criticisms and the examples you guys had were fair. And I agree with you, especially on uniqueness. Most of these things fall into the, just common aspects 100% through and through. Most of them end up in the trash. But I like that this one's hung around a bit. And again, it is because it's Christmas. Otherwise, it fits into another, just kind of a more of a general grouping. But I like that it has something unique about it, because there's always something special about holiday-ish type of movies. And you're right, this came out in mid-November, by the way. So it was, I think it gives it that little extra something, and it gives us the opportunities for some of our characters to be out shopping and things like that. So it helps the story along as kind of this unspoken aspect of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think we all kind of feel pretty good about where it landed. I'm sure you would have liked to see a little higher. And we do have the option to offer you a special category here. And especially because you are our favorite, I'm going to give you a choice between two special categories.
Wait, hold on. Do you hear that, Mike Rondo? I'm the favorite. Can't take it back. So, no backsies.
So I will either give you $1 for every time they use the word love in the film, or about 50 cents for every time Hugh Grant annoyed me. You get to pick.
I'll take Hugh Grant for 50 cents.
So, all right. So they were both the same dollar value, just so you know.
I know. I had a feeling.
But we're going to give you $950.
That's not bad.
Wow. That's pretty fair. That makes up for quite a bit. It actually brings the total to $48,450.
Right, I gotta know where this
we get one ranks. Of those really unique. Joe, why don't you take us to the guest list? Where does this fall on our guest list?
So that brings it to 21 out of 22 on the guest list, coming in healthily above Boondock Saints.
Yes.
And
my arms are up in celebration right now.
Something tells me Boondock Saints is going to be sitting there at the bottom for quite a while.
Right.
Hey, there's always Killer Clowns is on the list.
That's on the list, and whenever that does
Jason
come
gave
up,
us Killer Clowns.
that will definitely take that spot. But and right below Labyrinth. So
yeah, so
that's
Jonesy, we're in the same category. Yeah, I am obsessed with Labyrinth. I love it, but yeah, it hurt. It hurt when it fell to, which is now 39th. But I feel you. I definitely feel your pain on that.
I knew this was going to come in on the low end, but I just thought it would be different, for some of the ones that you guys have done. Definitely different for me to talk about, because I rarely get the opportunity to talk about these types of movies with people. These are like your guilty pleasures almost, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before and on other episodes. The point of the show was never to make bring people on and have them tell us what the best movie they've ever seen critically is. We want to talk about what movies we like. And there's a big difference between a movie you love and a movie that is necessarily critically fantastic, right? There are movies that are pretty high on this that I watched once, and that'll probably be the last time I ever watch them.
And they should have paid you to do that. Looking at you, Labyrinth.
Labyrinth, I unfortunately watched way more than once, and will never watch again. So, and
Amazon, I believe Amazon gave you the 4K version for that one, correct?
Yeah. Oh no. That was Google notified me that it upgraded for free my Labyrinth to 4K. As to which I said maybe I should burn my Google account.
Here, maybe this will help.
Which I gotta be honest, I was just hoping to come in above Mike. That was my only. Mike did Boondock Saints, right?
No, Mike did Clerks.
Oh, who did Boondock Saints? Was that Crowley?
That was Crowley. So
that was Crowley.
You came in like a solid $5,000 below Mike. So okay. Mike's gonna be able to rub that in your face for a while. But
that's all right. At least I beat Crowley. That works. They all look alike.
And he wins a win.
Yeah, they all look alike to me. So.
Oh, that is great. Well, hey, we're talking about love stories here. Mm-hmm. Joe, our next episode. I'm not going to say much about it. Let's just play our soundbite for the next episode.
Yeah, let's play the soundbite. That'll be fun.
Got everything I need right here with me. Got air in my lungs and a few blank sheets of paper. I mean, I love waking up in the morning not knowing what's going to happen or who I'm going to meet, where I'm going to wind up. Just the other night, I was sleeping under a bridge, and now here I am on the grandest ship in the world having champagne with you fine people. I'll take some of that. I figure life's a gift, and I don't intend on wasting it. You never know what hand you're going to get dealt next. You learn to take life as it comes at you. Oh, here you go, Cal. To make each day count.
Well said, Jack.
Yeah.
To make me count.
To make it count.
Yay.
Another love story, Joe.
I can't wait.
Two in a row now.
I can't wait.
I just can't. Guys, I'm not going to listen next week. I'm sorry.
And that one's long.
Is that?
That
Do we
one's
have
got
like?
some length
I've
on
never
it.
seen
Can
it.
we?
I'm so proud of that.
Can I like call in a substitute appraiser?
If you can get Todd on, then he can totally fill in for you. We're gonna have to do something completely different after this next one. I mean, you
Like sterilize the studio or what?
Hey, you know the Discord user that we have, Youthall, for maybe not that long.
Yeah.
He's been pushing Bad Boys for a long time. Maybe we just
It might be
we
time.
succumb and just do we just maybe this is redemption time for Nickerdoodle. She brought on Labyrinth we were talking about, but she added on to the listener list with some pretty good choices here recently. So maybe we like Jonesy
We're gonna
said,
need a hard
we're gonna have
pivot.
Hey, I've got a great idea. What if they took the movie for next week, but they used Will Smith and Martin Lawrence for the characters?
I mean,
100,000.
I'd watch that.
Greatest of all time.
We
No
could
question.
put the whole thing through that like face swap app and just put their faces on.
Oh my God. Could you just imagine Martin Lawrence playing the female lead?
Yeah, I
Holding
mean
him
he
up
would
at the front
totally
of the
he
boat.
would totally play the female lead too.
Oh my, I can
Yeah,
visualize this right now. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
I am visualizing it and it's fantastic.
Movie mashups. God love it.
Paint me like one of your French girls, Will.
Yeah, so I was thinking that for that episode, one of our photos that we put up in the artwork, I'm thinking of a very specific photo.
I know exactly what you're thinking.
And if you're part of our Discord, you probably know what photo that is. Hey, maybe that's the revenge, Jonesy, for not beating Mike. Maybe we finally release that photo.
I think it
We
must
may
be
have
done.
a Photoshop of Mike that would be really good to put in this specific film.
Yes, I would agree.
I approve this.
Jonesy, hey, thanks for coming on. We really do appreciate it.
It was a lot of
This
fun.
has been really great.
Yeah.
And it's nice to get different films. We do classics sometimes, but getting a film like this completely different. We have to think about it different. So thanks for bringing it on. And I'm going to change things up. Joe, instead of asking what's going on in the network, I'd actually like to ask from the guy who runs our operations. Jonesy, what's going on with the network lately?
Well, I mean, we've got a lot of great shows, of course, over on eargluemedia.com. Petticoats and Poppies is a great, I mean, for your listeners, it's pretty relevant.
Yeah.
They take film and then they look at it more from a historical aspect of it, which I think is a really neat angle of it. So Maggie Nicole, they host that one. Then, of course, my partner in crime over on the Star Wars sides of things, Albert Padilla also does Ready Player One inspired podcast called The Basement, where he's always picking up all these pop culture references and they go through it, him and his brother Will, and they're fantastic at picking apart everything. If you want a guy that has like an encyclopedic mind of pop culture, like I don't know who would compare with Albert, because this guy just knows everything. Now, he once told me, he admitted to me, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag behind the scenes, gentlemen, that he actually has to look things up from time to time, which
I don't believe it.
No.
I've had live conversations in person with that guy, and the things he pulls out of nowhere is amazing. It never stops.
It really
It's
took
just-
the mystery and the intrigue out of Albert Padilla for me when he said that to me. I was very disappointed. But again, I don't believe it either. I think he's full of it.
I don't either. I think that's what you get when you drink decaf. For all of us,
And that is
for all of
actually
us that
true.
drink.
When we record the Cantina Cast, he actually drinks decaf coffee
I don't
to
understand.
keep awake. I don't get it. But no, we got, we're always working on stuff. We'd love for people to come out on Discord and hang out with us. And we got a variety of different podcasts, of course, with just different topics. People are awesome to go back and forth. It's a great community. Everybody gets along pretty well. We don't really have any problems, nothing like that. So it's a safe space to come in and talk to you guys and talk to us, and invite everybody to come out there. That's on eargluemedia.com/Discord.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you want to give us some of your films, want us to add it to the list, or you just recommend some things, want us to talk about it, let us know. Twitter @FAppraisers. Our Instagram is @FilmAppraisers. If you want to email us, filmappraisers@gmail.com. You can also contact us on our website, eargluemedia.com/TFA. And just like Jonesy said, come to Discord. It's a great space. If people start getting rowdy, we will kick them off. Joe has done it many times in the past.
Thanks for letting me back on, Joe.
Well, you asked so nice.
Oh, thanks.
The other perk to Discord is that like a lot of our fans or listener selections come from Discord. And we also started doing a little bit like a random Discord picks. Like you get some perks, you get some behind the scenes. And on top of that, you also like Jonesy said, it's a fantastic community. I've heard other podcasters say you get the community you deserve. I don't know what we did to deserve the community we got because it's so good, but I'm glad we did it. And while you're online, while you're checking out the website, while you are checking out the other podcasts, please check us out on iTunes and rate and review us. We will take all 5 stars. Thank you very much.
Yeah, much like the Russian government, we're always listening.
This is not incorrect. Hey, before we head out of here, 2 quick things. Complete coincidence, but I just found out a few days ago, Joe's mother's birthday. Happy birthday to Joe's mom. Coincidentally, last week was my mother's birthday, so happy birthday to mothers of the Film Appraisers. I don't know if that's a self-help group, but I'm sure there will probably be one someday.
It's probably going to be a support group, though.
Happy birthday to both of them.
Happy birthday.
And hey, guys, that's it. We're going to go ahead and sign off. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Goodbye.
Later.
The Film Appraisers was created by Josh McCrae, produced by Joe Kane and Josh McCrae, graphics by Albert Padilla, and voiceover by Morgan Marshall.
The thoughts, expressions, views, opinions, and the like are those of the guests and the host of the Film Appraisers and do not represent the opinions of any entity associated with the creation or distribution of the films discussed herein.